name is Katie, and I am back reading Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown. I am just doing no mic using my phone, so we'll try something different. I'm going to try to not bump the table too much because I'm worried I'm going to shake the camera, but we'll see how this goes. It's a little experiment, right? I love that about this project of Storytime, because Storytime is always evolving, and it just gets to be a messy, simple thing that I get to play with. So if this is for you, thanks for being here, and if it isn't, that's okay. There are lots of other ways to receive stories in your life, whether that's audiobooks or written word or somebody else I'm sure will read this book to you. So if this isn't the modality for you, that is okay. Today we're going to talk about creating more possibilities, how we move towards life. Create. 1. To cause to come into being is something unique that would not naturally evolve or that is not made by ordinary processes. 2. To evolve from one's own thought or imagination as a work of art or an invention. Footnote 1, dictionary.com. Possible/possibility. That may or can exist, happen, be done, be used, etc. Footnote 2, ibid, dictionary.com. Wavicle, an entity having characteristic properties of both waves and particles. Footnote 3, Oxford Dictionaries. The multiverse or metaverse is the hypothetical set of finite and infinite possible universes, including the universe in which we live. Together, these universes comprise everything that exists, the entirety of space, time, matter, energy, and the physical laws and constants that describe them. The various universes within the multiverse are called parallel universes or other universes, or alternate universes. Footnote 4, Wikipedia. Grounding in nature. So we're back to the gray block of quotes. Quote, from dead plant matter to nematodes to bacteria, never underestimate the cleverness of mushrooms to find new food. Paul Stamets. Quote, last weekend I went on a walk with my partner at the Arboretum. There's this little makeshift stream, and all the trees along the stream have their roots in the stream. It just makes me think of how that happened and how long it would have taken for the roots to reach there and how that tree had to survive before it reached the stream. This helps me think about how, when we feel limitation, this is when we figure out how infinite our possibilities for us to grow out, around, through, to reach abundance. Christine DeJean. Quote, I've learned to trust nature. If she can make my weirdo, genderqueer capable self, she can make anything. Nature helps me reimagine and reform justice and hope like the ocean reimagines and reforms itself when it washes back in from sand, mountains, faucets. J. Maree Hill. Quote, the plant people have taught me to be generous and not be shy about blossoming, that it is our nature. I think when others see us, it can inspire them to open up and blossom too, and we can be a field ablaze with dignity and beauty together. Brenda Salgado. Biodiversity is a beauty of the natural world, the variety of life. Whether you take the planet as a whole or the ecosystems at a small scale, a forest, pond, a puddle, life is constantly creating options. In our best human practices, we watch the systems of the world and follow them. Permaculture. The natural world manifests life in ecosystems, not monocultures. One of my favorite ways of understanding nature, creating more possibilities, is to watch water move through the world. Water creates the ways for itself, moving with gravity, moving around obstacles, wearing down obstacles, reshaping the world. When there isn't an overt way forward, water seeps into the land, becomes a vapor in the sky, freezes into ice. When the time comes, water moves over the land in cloud form and nourishes elsewhere. And of course, we humans are mostly water. And look how many ways we manifest. Quote, I've always been drawn to the water, oceans, lakes, rivers. In recent years, I've come to recognize how this deep spiritual connection to the water energy connects me to the rhythms of our planet and our peoples. It is a necessary form of healing. Living cradled in between the mighty Mississippi and the beautiful Gulf of Mexico, their water strength provides me constant nourishment. I've learned from this that my organizing practice must include healing, as nature's energy is one we can always tap into when we feel depleted or overwhelmed. Sometimes tides are high and sometimes tides are low, but the waters remain in balance, and so can we. For me to stay in the struggle of the long haul and keep going for another 20 years, this is critical. Jayesha Dutta. Quote, I am a priest of Yamoha. The ocean is sacred to me. It's my place of worship, of home, of grounding. If I am drowning in my own stuff because of the relationship I have with Yamoha, she reminds me that my salvation is in moving the way she moves. The ocean doesn't stop moving, it moves in different ways, with different levels of intensity. Coney Island looks one way, the Indian Ocean moves another, more ferocious way. It's still all the ocean. Yamoha reminds me to not get caught up with this external calendar of production, or to get caught up with the idea that visibility is the same as doing the work. When I am flowing and can hear that small but powerful voice say yes, I feel a complete sense of calm. I know I am heading in the right direction. Joan Morgan. Quote, if Mama Nature teaches us nothing else, she teaches us that diversity is absolutely necessary for survival. Now, she doesn't mean some surface diversity, but a system where every single being is doing their part, pulling their weight. A homogeneous, gentrified ecosystem would quickly die. If we are committed to organizing sustainable and liberating social movements, they must be diverse, pulling especially from those who are the most impacted instead of suppressing their voices or using them as props. Nia Eshu Robinson. Quote, the world we want is one where many worlds fit. Zapatistas. Quote, when forced into a binary, you always choose wrong. Jelani Wilson. Creating more possibilities is my favorite aspect of emergent strategy. This is where we shape tomorrow toward abundance. Creating more possibilities counters the very foundational assumptions about strategy. The word strategy is a military term, which means a plan of action toward a goal. I want to really emphasize that the A's in that sentence. There is a practice of narrowing down, identifying one path forward, one strategy, one way, one agenda, one leader, one set of values, etc. Reducing the wild and wonderful world into one thing that we can grasp, handle, hold on to, and advance. We do this in movement all the time. I've been in countless meetings where there was a moment of creative abundance and energy, and then someone said we needed to pick one thing to get behind, or a 3 or 5 or 10-point plan. What came next was sometimes very compelling and visionary. Other times, oftentimes, it was reductionist, agreeing on the lowest common denominator, the least exciting thing, because that was the only place there was unity. There was often a general sense of dissatisfaction and collective shrugging into this unity that was not invigorating. Authentic, exciting unity takes time and lots of experimenting. The other tragedy of this quick narrowing is that people get left out. Not just in a slightly hurtful way, but left out of how we construct every aspect of society, infrastructure, and culture. We come up with incredible plans that don't account for crucial segments of our communities. I've witnessed this as well. Unity that entails leaving behind people with disabilities, or trans, indigenous, immigrant communities, and others. It isn't that we never need sharp, directed, focused, or even single-issue moments. We absolutely do. It's just that we live in a system that thrives when conditions are abundant and diverse. In a universe that holds contradictions and multitudes, and we often reject that chaotic, fertile reality too soon, as if we can't tolerate the scale of our own collective brilliance. In my observations of the natural world, there are examples of scale that offer another way. When we think about snowflakes, grains of sand, waves in water, stars, there is evidence that many possibilities exist for how we manifest inside our potential. Then there are wavicles, entities that are simultaneously waves and particles. Then there is quantum mechanics, which examines the smallest units of our universe and shows that everything we think of as solid and singular is actually fluid in multitudes. Excerpt from Notes Toward a Theory of Quantum Blackness. Footnote 5, Sophia Samnatar, Notes Toward a Theory on Quantum Blackness, Strange Horizons 29, with respect to the work of Black Quantum Futurism, reprinted with permission. So this is by Sophia Samnatar. 2. Infinities. Blackness cannot be integrated with quantum mechanics at very high energies. At low energies, it is ignored. To address energies at or higher than the Planck scale, a new theory of quantum blackness is required. To address vulnerability, to address a relationship to interruption, to integrate the vibration of urban backyards, blackness has been described as non-renormalizable. Its behavior depends on an infinite number of independent parameters. Therefore, to develop a consistent theory of quantum blackness, one must conduct an infinite number of experiments. The experiment of zones, analysis of prison flesh attraction, the experiment of the black smile of the child, infinite kinship experiments, infinite gestures, a laboratory vast enough to contain the wall. Sometimes we were so tired we couldn't lie down. We would take walks. We would buy nothings. We joked about the experiment of the corner store, the experiment of the fiercely freezing, neon-colored drinks, of the red powder on the fingers, fluorescent light. Take into consideration the presence of a curved background. Consider imaginary time, non-communicative geometry, the trapped surface. Consider the implications of the phrase cannot be integrated. Consider string theory, which introduced the concept of vibration. Experiments in exhaustion. Consider that the problem of quantum blackness will mean different things to different researchers. My colleague died of complications from a condition called hood disease, but she herself always referred to it as white supremacy disease. It is possible that the black force particle does not exist, that the effects we observe derive from a different mechanism. As my colleague wrote before her untimely death, only 2 words in this research have meaning, and they are not quantum blackness. At the human scale, in order to create a world that works for more people, for more life, we have to collaborate on the process of dreaming, envisioning, and implementing that world. We have to recognize that a multitude of realities have, do, and will exist. Collaborative ideation is a way to get into this. Ideation is the process of birthing new ideas, and the practice of collaborative ideation is about sharing that process as early as possible. This is not to say there is no space for individual creation. I love the selfishness of closing the world out and unleashing the realm of my imagination and creativity. But how do we disrupt the constant individualism of creation when it comes to society, our shared planet, our resources? The more people who co-create the future, the more people whose concerns will be addressed from the foundational level in this world. Meaningful collaboration both relies on and deepens relationship. The stronger the bond between the people or groups in collaboration, the more possibility you can hold. In beginning this work, notice who you feel drawn to and where you find ease. And notice who challenges you, who makes the edges of your ideas grow or fortify. I find that my best work has happened during my most challenging collaborations because there are actual differences that are converging and creating more space, ways forward that serve more than one worldview. Quote, as a part of our liberation, the earth teaches us that everything is connected. The soil needs rain, organic matter, air, worms, and life in order to do what it needs to do to give and receive life. Each element is an essential component. Organizing takes humility and selflessness and patience and rhythm, while our ultimate goal of liberation will take many expert components. Some of us build and fight for land, healthy bodies, healthy relationships, clean air, water, homes, safety, dignity, and humanizing education. Others of us fight for food and political prisoners and abolition and environmental justice. Our work is intersectional and multifaceted. Nature teaches us that our work has to be nuanced and steadfast, and more than anything, that we need each other at our highest natural glory in order to get free. Derek Cooper. This is how Octavia's brood came to exist, because Walida and I have radically different visions and work styles. Walida pays attention to values alignment in every detail, and I skim, focused on patterns and magic. I've worked with Invincible Weaver over many years, and we identified early that where they are gloriously thorough, I am fast and efficient. Where they seek research, how things happened in the past and lessons to apply forward, building a case, I feel things, mostly finding my attention on the present and future. Projects with both of these collaborators have been able to accommodate tons of perspectives and mobilize lots of other creative work, in part because of the space between the collaborators at the core and learning to communicate and ideate within that space. Occupy and Black Lives Matter are two large-scale recent efforts that take this collaborative ideation to a movement level, proliferating futures from a place of possibility, of multitudinous paths forward toward a shared dream. In our work for Octavia's brood, Walida and I articulated that all organizing is science fiction, by which we mean that social justice work is about creating systems of justice and equity in the future, creating conditions that we have never experienced. That is a futurist focus, and the practices of collaboration and adaptation and transformative justice are science fictional behavior. We didn't create this understanding, we observed it amongst the Afrofuturists and sci-fi writers and creators we grew up loving and being liberated by. Language changes with time, and sometimes the word for a people or an action comes centuries late. But I want to always remember and honor those who stayed and stay future-oriented in the face of oppression. Quote, "There is nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns." Octavia Butler, Parable of the Trickster. Footnote 6. This quote was shared by Jerry Canavan, the first researcher to go through the unpublished drafts of the Parable of the Trickster in the Huntington Papers. Afrofuturism and #Black Spring. Footnote 7. There are notes from my keynote speech at the Afrofuturism Conference, New School, New York City, 2015. We tend to think and speak of Afrofuturism as the far-off future, something beyond our current comprehension and planet, but now is the only moment, and we hope things will be different in the next now. And I admit I am excited about the near future. What are we about to do after this winter of discontent? We say Black Lives Matter, an Afrofuturist assertion. Because we see something other than the normative truths of this place, we see something that is not here. We see the future cast over this devastating present moment. We see and we believe, we know, and we bend the world to assert and embody that Black Lives Matter. That to me is the heart of Afrofuturism, as I choose to understand it. Footnote 8. In his essay, Black to the Future, Mark Derry defined Afrofuturism as, quote, speculative fiction that treats African American themes and addresses African American concerns in the context of 20th century technoculture. Labels don't excite me so much, but concepts turn me on. The concept of seeing and creating the future from a perspective that has the lineage of an African seed, of something older and other than Western, feels healing to me. We, of that displaced diasporic seed who involuntarily reach back to the motherland in our dreams, have been scattered so far from each other. And in spite of all the odds, we have been resilient. I cannot speak emotionally about the journeys of the other seed clusters, though I am seeking stories all the time, reading Nnedi Okorafor and Ben Okri and Credo Mutwa, and wanting to know more. Lately I've been obsessing over the Afrofuturism and justice orientation of slave-era blacks, because our situation today feels so terrifying and exhausting and sometimes hopeless, and there's so much trauma and grief to bear, and yet we survive that. Not individually, but collectively. Not all of those Black people were Afrofuturists, but to focus on Afrofuturists in the Black social justice tradition, I would note that Africans leaping off of slaver ships were Afrofuturists. Slave-era parents teaching their babies a foreign alphabet in the candlelit dirt were Afrofuturists. Black women dissociating themselves through to tomorrow while being raped into motherhood were Afrofuturists. Those who raised the children of violence and those who chose not to, all were predicting the future and articulating their choices. Slaves who ran to freedom and slaves who ran to their deaths were Afrofuturists. It is the emphasis on a tomorrow that centers the dignity of that seed, particularly in the face of extinction, that marks for me the Afrofuturists. And of course, there are the big ones, whose names have made it through the erasers of history books into our mouths. Harriet, Sojourner, Frederick, John, Malcolm, James, Ella, Martin, Nina, June, Tony, Octavia. Now it is our work, and the exciting thing about this time is that we are learning to name ourselves, our distinctions and solidarities, our Afrofuturisms, developing enough of a common dream language that we can be that much more explicit about the real futures we are shaping into existence. We are touching the future, reaching out across boundaries and post-apocalyptic conditions to touch each other, to call each other out as family, as beloveds. Quote, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. Footnote 9, Butler, Parable of a Sower. We are making ourselves vulnerable enough to be changed, which will, of course, change what Black existence means. Octavia Butler, who gave us that philosophical spirit poem Earthseed that I just quoted, is a bridge for many of us between this world and the narratives that hold us through to the next realm or the parallel universe or the future in which we are the protagonists. We are creating a world we have never seen. We are whispering it to each other, cuddled in the dark, and we are screaming it at people who are so scared of it that they dress themselves in war regalia to turn and face us. Because of our ancestors, because of us, and because of the children we are raising, there will be a future without police and prisons. Yes. There will be a future without rape, without harassment and constant fear and childhood sexual assault. A future without war, hunger, violence, with abundance, where gender is a joyful spectrum, where my nephew would not be bullied for his brilliant differentness, where each of our bodies is treated like sacred ground, whether we have insurance or not. Visionary fiction, a term that Walida coined, includes sci-fi, speculative fiction, fantasy, magical realism, myth, all of it. In addition to this intentional genrecide, visionary fiction intentionally explores how change happens from the bottom up, how change works in collective ways, disrupting the single white male hero narrative. Centering marginalized communities, meaning we are the center of the story as opposed to the sexy and unbelievably stylish sidekick. And visionary fiction is hard and realistic and hopeful. It's neither utopian nor dystopian, it's more like life. Imagination is one of the spoils of colonization, which in many ways is claiming who gets to imagine the future for a given geography. Losing our imagination is a symptom of trauma. Reclaiming the right to dream the future, strengthening the muscle to imagine together as Black people is a revolutionary decolonizing activity. Some of the key practices that show up in Octavia Butler's work are collaboration, compassion, curiosity, romantic and sexual, and sensual and non-possessive love, play, meditation, mediation, and the patience that comes from seeing ourselves in a much longer arc of time than we are encouraged to see in the instantaneous culture of the modern world. What we are really asking, what Octavia was asking, is how do we, who know the world needs to change, begin to practice being different? How do we have to be for justice to truly be transformative? Not them, that massive amorphous them, that is also us in our heads and hearts, or that loves us, or that is tired of this shit, but it is family to us, not them, because maybe they don't recognize yet that these changes are the key to human survival, but us who are awake and awakening. How do we need to be for Black Lives to Matter? What do we need to heal in ourselves in order to offer a future of any real peace, or to become the protagonist of this human story and earn the flip of the page of all the sentient life in the universe, to claim the future as a compelling place for our miracles? This is everything. Science fiction is not fluffy stuff. Afrofuturism is not just the coolest look that ever existed. The future is not an escapist place to occupy. All of it is the inevitable result of what we do today, and the more we take it in our hands, imagine it as a place of justice and pleasure, the more the future knows we want it and that we aren't letting go. Quote, nature also teaches me persistence and perseverance, because in the end, nothing stops nature. If a rose can grow out of the concrete, then so can we. Micah Hobbs Fraser. Quote, I love biomimicry as a concept of human society learning from nature to make our lives better. In progressive arguments, we often point to examples in nature to prove our point. What's ironic is that the left often discounts religion, but what makes the "it happens in nature" argument so powerful is this belief that nature is created by some higher being or a force beyond us. I think that is my attraction to nature. It's somehow proof of faith, something more powerful than us, yet that we are a part of at the same time. The most powerful thing for organizers to have, I believe, is faith. This belief that we can win, that we can change the world, that we can all be better. Terry Marshall. Okay, that's the end of that section. Next we'll jump into conversations, where it looks like there are quite a few interviews, and then we'll start the assessment after that. Hope you enjoyed this section of Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Maree Brown, and I'll see you next time. Have a good day. Bye.